The Steel typing is one of, if not the most important typing in all of Draft League. The incredible defensive typing offers so many important resistances that it is almost a requirement to have a good one on your team, unless you really want to struggle. That begs the question, what is the best Steel type in Pokemon Draft League's long history? Today, we will attempt to answer that question. Hey guys, OGalbina here, and we make a ton of Draft League content here on this channel. This can range from our own battles to just competitive discussions on the format, just like this video. In fact, we have a video just like this going over the best Dark types in Draft League history that went up recently. So if you do enjoy Draft League and content like this, be sure to subscribe. We're getting so close to our 4K subscribers goal, and I would really appreciate your help in that journey. Also, be sure to drop a like if you enjoy as well. That being said, let's jump right into it. First, we'll talk a bit about the Steel typing and why it is so good defensively. Go ahead and think of some of the most threatening types offensively in the game. Dragon, Fairy, Flying, and Ice all come to mind immediately for me. Steel types defensively answer all of those. It also gives you an added poison immunity. The synergy that Steel types have with other Dragons and Fairies is also incredible. In fact, the only reason the idea of the Dragon Fairy Steel core works is because of the Steel type. It holds the integrity of that core together almost single-handedly, both checking other terrifying Dragons and Fairies while supporting its teammates of the same typing by not only resisting those typings, but also Ice and Poison. Because of this defensive profile, the Steel typing is usually seen as a defensive typing, which, granted, it is. But there are plenty of Steel types in Draft League history that can tap into a more offensive approach, often with a good secondary typing. These are the greatest Steel types of all time, in my opinion. They hold together their teams defensively, but have the capabilities to force massive progress on their own. A great example of this is Heatran. Heatran is very often the defensive glue on a ton of the teams it finds itself on. Yes, that's a nasty 4x ground weakness it has. And the water weakness isn't great, but man, does it have a fun defensive profile outside of this. I mean, look at its resistance chart. This is a pretty ludicrous amount of resistances. Sure, you fold to any EQ coming your way, but we probably shouldn't be taking Earthquakes on our Heatran anyways. Heatran isn't just a defensive behemoth though. It's also quite versatile and strong offensively. Its sets range anywhere from the standard Magma Storm taunt sets, which are incredible into fat teams, all the way to Choice Specs, Choice Scarf, or just rocks 3 attacks with a Resist Berry. The offensive synergy between its Stab Fire moves and Flash Cannons and Earth Power for coverage make Heatran one of the most obnoxious Pokemon to switch into. Fattermons, even bulky waters, are liable to get Magma Storm trapped and worn down, while offense doesn't like switching in on Flamethrower, Overheat, or Eruption in Generation 8. Tri was also a great abuser of Z moves in Generation 7, nuking through teams while still being able to run fatter variants. The reason we don't have Heatran in the number 1 slot is just because it slowed down quite considerably this generation. In between Generation 8 and 9, it lost access to both Eruption, which was incredible on Scarf and Spec sets, and Toxic, which was incredible on fatter Stallbreaker variants. Plus, the metagame has sped up and gotten much stronger with power creep. This means Heatran feels a bit too slow to be offensively consistent and not quite bulky enough to wall out half the game like it did before. But it definitely deserves a shout out here, as it has been the gold standard for Steel types in every generation prior, and even then is still pretty solid now. Scizor and subsequently Mega Scizor definitely deserve a shout out as well. Bug and Steel is one of the greatest typings in competitive Pokemon, with only 1 weakness and a 4x1 to fire. This incredible defensive profile allows Scizor to function as a near perfect pivot with access to strong stab U-turns, capitalizing on any switches into it and getting its user out into another strong breaker, or at least a more advantageous matchup. Scizor can also do the breaking itself, with ridiculously strong bullet punches boosted by either a Choice Band or a Swords Dance, making it either a top tier revenge killer into offensive teams or a win condition on its own. Utility-wise, Scizor can keep itself healthy with Roost, or even defog away opposing entry hazards. Scizor's positive qualities were only enhanced with its Mega Evolution in Mega Scizor, becoming an example of one of the metagame's best win conditions with a Swords Dance, or one of the best pivots with U-turn to facilitate its other team members. The reason Scizor didn't take home the number 1 spot is because while base Scizor is a solid Steel type, it could never quite hold a candle to Mega Scizor. And while Mega Scizor is incredible, it was only run for Oras and Usum, whereas other Steel types on this list have much more staying power without the need of a generational gimmick. Hopefully Mega Scizor will make a triumphant return soon in Legends ZA. Kartana is our next shout out. There has never been a more dominant offensive Steel type in Draft League history. I'd go as far as to say that Kartana is the greatest Snowball Mon in Draft League history, period. In 9 out of 10 matchups, Kartana can simply slap on a Choice Scarf, click Knock Off on its switch in once, and then once hazards are up, it will simply inevitably win with Leaf Blade, Smart Strike, Knock Off, or Sacred Sword. Beast Boost is the biggest proprietor of this. as with Kart's massive base 181 attack, it will pretty much always gain an attack boost upon a knockout unless you specifically run the timid speed boosting set. From there, it's nigh impossible to stop a Kartana in an endgame where it grabs a beast boost or two. Despite being a grass and steel type, Kartana's greatest tool comes with its access to knockoff. Not only is it strong, but the utility it brings is insane. Most switch-ins to Kartana's Nuke of a Leaf Blade are fire, flying, or steel types. Steel types hate losing their boots or leftovers, as most don't have recovery, or they hate losing their Chople Berry they have for Kartana's Sacred Sword. Flying and fire types really hate losing their boots, as they simply do not check Kartana if rocks are up and they cannot avoid them any longer. Taking rocks into a Kartana attack into another one is simply impossible for most teams. Unless you have a Corviknight, Skarmory, or Celesteela, it's not looking good for you. The reason Kart doesn't have the number 1 spot in this list is its non-existent defensive utility. Kart isn't really a steel type, it's a Kartana. It doesn't really offer any insane resistances that the other steels mentioned have. And it has one of the worst special defense stats ever. So while Kartana is a beast, it's hard to say it's the best steel type ever. Aegislash is our next contender. We really only have Generation 8 to go off for Aegislash, as it was pretty universally banned in both Generation 6 and 7. The reason it was allowed in Sword and Shield was due to seeing some pretty drastic nerfs, losing 10 BST in its attack, defense, special attack, and special defense when in its blade or shield form. It also saw a nerf to its signature move in King Shield, which now only lowered the opposing Pokemon's attack stat by 1 when making contact with the buffed up Protect. This is a blessing in disguise for Aegislash and drafted players alike, as it was now finally allowable in the format. AG truly exemplified the dual offensive and defensive threat quality that the best steel types all have. In its blade form, it could throw off strong spec Shadow Balls and Flash Cannons, or Sword Dance up and sweep with its stabs, Shadow Sneak, and close combat as coverage. It can even set up a sweep with an Autotomized weakness policy set. From the defensive side, its shield form walled out half the game, as well as just pivot in and check a majority of the top tier offensive threats in the game. It could also use that shield form to find a multitude of setup opportunities with either the Sword Dance or Autotomized we mentioned before. The reason AG isn't high on this list, or potentially number 1, is that it really only had Sword and Shield to show off, as it's not in Scarlet and Violet's decks currently. As good as it was in Generation 8, it wasn't the best steel type in its generation, and it was not able to be used in prior gens. Really quick, I'd like to give some quick shoutouts to mid-tier steel types that may not be meta-defining, but have had incredible and consistent careers. I have to shout out Ferrothorn, one of the best hazard setters of all time. Metagross is also an incredible mid-tier steel that always finds great viability for its price point. Pokemon like Jirachi have also seen consistent success in every generation, even if not completely meta-warping. Goldengo is also a Pokemon I want to shout out from Generation 9. Its incredible good as gold ability and ghost typing makes it one of the best facilitators of hazard stack hyper offense builds. However, the greatest steel type in Draft League history has to go to, drumroll please, Celesteela. I cannot think of a Pokemon that more perfectly exemplifies the defensive steel while also being the dual-pronged offensive threat, like all the other top-tier steel types we've mentioned prior. Defensively, Steel Flying might be a top 3 typing ever, with only 2 weaknesses to Electric and Fire. And with a bulk spread of 97, 103, and 101, it can be incredibly hard to take down in conjunction with its tried and true Leaf Seed plus Protect set. Celesteela is incredible offensively as well, serving as an incredible sweeper if it gets off an Autotomize and a KO with its incredible coverage and great attacking stats from both sides in 101 and 107. Speaking of getting said KO, Beast Boost is really what makes Celly incredible. As you saw, Celesteela's even stat spread allows it to grab a Beast Boost in 4 different stats, allowing it to be incredibly customizable in this counter team format. In Generation 7, Celly is pretty universally considered to be the second best Pokemon by many, only behind Tapu Koko. This is because while you always have to be prepared for the bulky annoying Leaf Seed variant, you also always have to be prepared to not straight up lose to an Autotomized Z-move variant at any point. Covering both options can be incredibly strenuous and downright impossible for some teams. Celly continued its dominance in Generation 8, and while it lost the immediate power of Z-moves, Power Herb Meteor Beam sets started popping up all over the place, giving Celly a great way to compound boost quickly. When you pair this with its unrivaled defensive prowess, it once again was a top tier minigame staple. Unfortunately, we did not get the chance to see Celly in action in Generation 9, but honestly that might be a good thing. I personally don't want to live in a world where it can terrestrialize. Celesteela's unmatched defensive utility and instant win potential is what makes it the greatest steel type in Draft League history. There you have it folks, great steel type, ever. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you guys have any other Pokemon that you think I missed. I might have missed some. There's so many good steel types in the format. A lot of them end up kind of being mid-tier guys, like those Metagross type Pokemon that I always end up drafting. I personally feel like it was Celesteela. You can make the argument for Cart, you can make the arguments for Scizor, you can make the argument for Ag, and I wouldn't be too upset, but I'm going to lean Celesteela personally. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Again, drop a like if you enjoyed. Sub if you're new. See you guys in the next one. Later.